Hi, it's me again. I'm back today with an opinion piece on unemployment, minimum wage, homelessness, unaffordable healthcare, and how to tackle these issues here in America. As I mentioned in my first video, I was laid off from work, so I'm currently on unemployment. As a matter of fact, I used some of that unemployment to purchase the editing software I'm currently using. So I guess technically that makes this channel a government-funded program. Luckily, my living situation doesn't require me to spend very much money, which is good because my unemployment barely breaks $1,000 a month. I'm very grateful to have the people that I have in my life. But, as we all know, not everyone has it this easy. Most of us have bills to pay, and the cost of living remains a constant in our lives, regardless of what's happening in the world. Most individuals don't have the privilege to wait out this pandemic. They're forced to work through the pandemic, not as a risky move to get ahead, but as a necessity to live. And the worst part is that due to the pandemic, finding good paying work can be difficult. The COVID-19 pandemic is largely the cause for the shortage of work, but the US government has offered very little help to struggling families, which has resulted in an eviction crisis the likes of which we have never seen in this country. The pandemic has magnified some of our country's most pressing issues. There were already over 500,000 homeless people in America. There were already people living paycheck to paycheck, barely making ends meet. People already could not afford their hospital bills before their loved ones were put on ventilators. The United States has symbolically stated through its lack of financial help that you either find work or go homeless trying. And this ultimatum is not new to us. Our country has always operated under this work to survive culture. Unfortunately, this traditional way of running our country simply isn't working anymore because people are working and barely surviving. Minimum wage has been sitting at $7.25 an hour since 2009. That's 11 years without a change in minimum wage, despite inflation. If you work 40 hours a week for a month, you will barely break $1,000. You'd be lucky to find a place that would only charge you $500 a month. And when you consider your phone bill, your internet bill, your utilities, and food, there is no surviving on minimum wage on your own. There is no saving money. There is no 50-30-20 financing plan. There is only working to barely make it by. So what is the solution to minimum wage being significantly below living wage? We could raise the federal minimum wage. Although smaller businesses may struggle to pay the new mandatory wage, the government could help subsidize those businesses. The counter-argument that I most often hear is that businesses would just hire less people in that situation, or alternatively, you just need to work harder to secure a better paying job. However, there are only so many higher paying jobs available, so theoretically, if everyone worked hard enough, there still wouldn't be enough higher paying jobs for everyone. Another possible solution? Universal basic income. With UBI, we can ensure that everyone is given a living wage, even if they cannot work, and they can make the choice to seek out work to further increase their wealth. Of course, some would argue that that is socialism, which is communism, and communism is bad. Others would argue that the population will become lazy and not want to seek out work. The idea is that you can't just give people something or they won't appreciate it. Some would argue that UBI is way too expensive. You could counter-argue and say, tax the rich, to which they would respond, you want to take what someone else has earned for yourself. I've seen people say that the government should provide housing to the homeless. Some would argue against that. I'm going to have to put in a little bit of bias and say that we should do whatever we can to help homeless people find places to live. Aside from empathy, poverty is correlated to higher crime rates, so less poverty equals less crime. Another major reason why we should help the homeless is because of the pandemic. The more homeless there are, the more likely the pandemic will continue to spread. Something to note is that we claim to not have the money to help the homeless, but we do have the money to build anti-homeless architecture. I've seen people say we should have affordable health care. Others argue that socialized medicine is problematic and overall poor in comparison to privatized medicine. So the reason why I brought up all of these discussions on socioeconomic issues is because they all have one important thing in common. One group of people presents a solution to a problem, and the other group presents a counter-argument for why that solution would not work. This on its own is fine. It's important that we hash out the positives and negatives of policies. But the problem presents itself when one side consistently shoots down the other side's solutions without presenting any viable solutions of their own. This creates a situation where a problem may be addressed, but the people cannot agree on a solution, and in the end, nothing gets accomplished. While we struggle to agree on a solution to many of our wage-related problems, Americans continue to suffer. We can see this plain as day in a modern example: U.S. government COVID relief discussions. They have gone so poorly that we have now reached a point where we are not even talking about COVID relief until after the presidential election. The problem with this is that people's lives don't just stop because there's an election around the corner. 8 months, one $1,200 check. This is unacceptable. So how do we reach a solution in a reasonable amount of time without taking huge risks that could hurt us in the future? My suggestion is that we pay attention to how other developed countries handle similar problems. Japan, Finland, Denmark, Singapore, and Canada all have very low homeless populations. Canada currently is considered to have the best healthcare in the world. Sure, it has its flaws, but at the end of the day, you can get a checkup without having to wonder whether or not you can pay rent afterwards. For some reason, people in this country are really against the idea of affordable healthcare. Wouldn't it be nice to not have to rely on your job benefits for healthcare? Wouldn't it be nice to actually be able to afford life-saving medicine and surgeries? This appears to be a recurring theme where we have an obvious solution, but people constantly shoot down solutions as if the problems that exist aren't actually that big of a deal. Our inability to competently discuss socioeconomic issues results in inaction, which continues to hurt the least fortunate individuals in the country. Well, I believe that about does it for this video. It's not the most complicated video, I understand, but I decided I wanted to get something out there before I started on this major project on the Black Lives Matter protests. Thank you all for watching. This will be the last time I use a script. I'll be more so taking like footnotes and reading those off and sort of talking through my points. I was originally going to do this, but since I did not have any editing experience, I decided against it and used a script for my first few videos. So yeah, the next project I do is going to be the most ambitious that I've done so far, so it's probably not going to come out mid-November. We're probably looking at more late November, early December. But I hope to see you all there. Thank you all for watching.